Hi, I'm David. Thank you for spending the night with us. Tonight we go back about 8.5 centuries to the city of Hangzhou in the Song dynasty, when it was the capital of China and the largest city in the whole world, and to the lake at its edge that poets have loved more than any other water on earth. It is raining there tonight, softly, the way it rains in the south of China in early summer, and you are going to spend the night at a tea house by the shore. Everything you will hear is drawn from real history, and the sources are listed below. There are no ads waiting to wake you, and nothing sudden ever happens here. Before we begin, one quiet word. If these nights help you sleep, subscribe now, while your eyes are still open, and tomorrow night will be waiting for you when you need it. A like helps other tired travelers find this fire. That is the whole ask. So settle in, let the day go, and let the rain in the past keep you company. Good night. Welcome, traveler. You can close your eyes now. There's nothing here you need to see with your eyes open, and nothing here that needs anything from you at all. Tonight, the only work being done is the work of resting, and you are already doing it perfectly. Tonight, we are going back 8.5 centuries to the far side of the world, to the eastern edge of a great empire, where the rice lands run flat and green to the sea, and where a river famous for its tides meets the ocean, and where, pressed in between a walled city and a ring of soft green hills, there lies a lake. The city is Hangzhou. In the age we are visiting, it carries a second name as well, Linen, and it is the capital of the Empire of the Song, and it is, by every count that has come down to us, the largest city in the world, not one of the largest, the largest. More human beings are going home to supper tonight inside and around its walls, somewhere near 1 million of them, than in any other city on the face of the earth, and most of the world has never heard of it. And against the city's western side, held between the wall and the hills, like a mirror laid down in a green room, is the lake, West Lake, the most praised, most painted, most poeted over piece of water in the history of the world. Poets have been coming here for hundreds of years already, on the night we are visiting, to look at it and fail to finish describing it, and they will keep coming for hundreds of years more. And tonight, it is raining. It has been raining all day, and it is going to rain all night. Not a storm. There are no storms anywhere in this story. This is the soft, warm, patient rain of early summer in the south of China. The rain that arrives in the weeks when the plums turn yellow and stays for days at a time. So steady and so gentle that the people of this country have given it the plum's own name. They call these weeks the plum rains. The rain falls straight down, without wind, without one clap of thunder, whispering on the lake and pattering on 100,000 tiled roofs, and everyone in the largest city in the world has simply opened an umbrella of oiled paper or put on a cape of woven straw and carried on with the evening. Rain like this is not weather to them. It is the season doing its work, filling the paddies that feed the city, and they go to sleep inside the sound of it, the way you are about to. Nothing bad happens in the city tonight. Nothing surprising happens either. The barge you are riding has already come safely down the last of the canal. The friend whose letter you carry has already sent word ahead, and a place is already kept for you. A tea house on the shore of the lake itself, where the lamp is already lit, and the brazier is already burning. The markets are carrying on under their dripping awnings in the ordinary way, and will fold themselves up in the ordinary way. And the only decision anyone will ask of you this whole night is whether you would like your tea before your supper or after it. Tonight is one quiet night among tens of thousands of quiet nights that history never bothered to write down. That is why we are going. The chronicles kept the emperors and the treaties and the fleets of grain. They let the ordinary rainy evenings slip through, and the ordinary rainy evenings were most of what a life was, even here, even in the greatest city in the world. You are a traveler tonight, come down from the north by water, and before this night is over, the house by the lake will give you two small gifts. One is the sight of a bowl of tea being made the way this age makes it, which is not the way your age makes it. No leaves floating in a pot. That comes centuries from now. Here the tea is ground to a powder fine as the first dry snow, and whisked with hot water in a bowl, glazed black as a starless midnight, until a foam rises white as the snow itself, light out of dark, winter out of a summer evening, and once you have watched it done, you will never forget it. The other gift is the rain itself, handed back to you before morning, turned the right way round, so that the thing you thought had spoiled your one night on the most beautiful lake on earth turns out to be the finest thing the lake had left to give. That is the whole of tonight's story. If you drift off in the middle of it, that is not an interruption. That is the story working. So, let us come down the last mile of the water together as the light goes. You have been traveling for days on a river that human beings made. That is worth lying still and thinking about for a moment. The canal under your barge was dug by hand, generations of hands, long before anyone now living was born. A calm brown ribbon of water running down through the rice country, joining river to river, town to town, stitching the whole green south of the empire to its capital, and it is the reason the largest city in the world can exist at all. Everything the city eats comes to it this way. Barge after barge after barge, rice and firewood and salt and wine, sliding along at the pace of a patient walk. You have watched the rice barges go by for days, so low in the water with their loads that the rain seems to fall directly onto the grain of the empire, and you have learned the canal sounds by heart without meaning to. The knock and creak of the long sculling oar in its rope loop, the drip of the mat canopy's edge, the soft greetings called from boat to boat, unhurried, half swallowed by the rain, no louder than they need to be. The barge you ride belongs to a family who live their whole lives aboard it, as thousands of families do on these waters, and they have made a dry world under the arched roof of woven mats, a foot or two of lamplight and bedding, and a little clay stove where the evening rice is already steaming. The barge master stands at the stern in a cape of layered straw and a wide hat of plaited bamboo, and the rain runs off him as it runs off a roof, and he works the great stern oar with a slow figure of emotion he could do asleep, and perhaps half is. When you came aboard, he looked at the rain and looked at you, and handed you an umbrella of oiled paper, amber-colored, smelling faintly of the oil that seals it, and told you to keep it till the lake. Everyone in this country owns such an umbrella, or a straw cape, or both. The rain is not fought here. It is dressed for, and then it is listened to. And now, in the last gray-blue light of the day, the city is beginning. You feel it before you see it. The canal grows crowded, barges nested 2 and 3 deep along the banks, lamplight showing in the gaps of 1,000 mat canopies. The banks turn from mud to fitted stone. Warehouses stand up along the water, and the smell of the evening changes. Wood smoke, and steamed rice and fish, and the cool green smell of whetstone. The smell of a great city having its supper in the rain. Ahead, through the falling gray, a wall rises, a real wall, high and long and dark with rain, and in it a water gate stands open, lamplit, its reflection wavering down the wet canal toward you, like a lantern hung in the water itself. And the barge master leans on his oar, and the bow swings, gentle as a thought, and the largest city in the world takes you in without even looking up from its evening. No one in this city knows it is the greatest city in the world, or if they know it, no one is thinking about it tonight, because it is raining and it is supper time, and that is the first thing to love about the place. 1 million people, and every single one of them is at this hour mostly concerned with staying dry and getting fed exactly as you are. You go ashore at a stone quay slicked with rain and lamplight, and a boy from the tea house is there waiting for you, sent to meet the barge, a boy of perhaps 12 with a paper lantern on a short pole and an umbrella of his own, who takes charge of you with the seriousness of a boy given a real job to do, and leads you up into the streets. And the streets, traveler, even in the rain, even at dusk, are like nothing you have ever walked. They go on. That is the first thing. Street after street after street, stone paved, running with shining water, roofed on both sides with tiled eaves that pour their little waterfalls into the gutters, and under the eaves the shops are still open, lamplit, awninged, so that you walk through the rain down a corridor of glowing rooms. Here is a shop that sells nothing but silk, bolts of it shining in the lamplight like standing water. Here is a shop of printed books, actual books, printed by the thousand from carved blocks of wood, stacked to the beams, cheap enough that a clerk can own a shelf of them, and no one in this city finds that miracle even slightly remarkable, because their grandparents' grandparents already had printed books. Here is a medicine shop smelling of 100 roots and barks, and a shop of paper umbrellas exactly like the one over your head, and a cook shop from which a man in a straw cape is just now setting out, carrying a stacked and covered box of hot suppers through the rain. Because in this city, 8.5 centuries before your time, you can have a hot meal carried to your door through the rain, and people do, all the time, and think nothing of it. You pay for a paper twist of candied fruit that the boy talks you into, because it is exactly the sort of thing a boy talks a traveler into, with a few copper coins off the string at your belt, coins being for small sweet things in every age. But at the counter of the silk shop, as you pass, a merchant is settling a real account, and what he counts out under the lamp is money made of paper, printed money, stamped in vermilion with official seals, folded soft with use. The empire prints it. The shops of this city take it as easily as they take copper or silver, and it works. Yours is the first age of paper money on earth, and you are standing in it, in the rain, eating candied fruit. The boy leads you along the edge of the great central street, and down it, just now lighting its lamps for the evening, runs the night market. Awnings heavy with rain, lamplight doubled in the wet paving, the sellers of sweetmeats and roasted chestnuts and cut flowers, calling gently, without urgency, under the steady drumming of the rain on the cloth. On a clear night in a dry month it would roar. Tonight the rain has gentled it to a murmur, but it will not close, because the night market of this city never closes for weather. The old men here will tell you, and the records of the city will one day agree with them, that even in the depths of winter, in rain and in falling snow, the stalls stay lit and the sellers stay calling, softly, to whoever is out, all the way to the small hours. 1 million people make a market at every hour there is. Tonight, it simply does its business more quietly, under its dripping awnings, like everything else in the rain. There is a saying in this country, and the boy would nod along if you said it aloud. Above, there is heaven. Below, there are Suzhou and Hangzhou. Heaven above, and this below, and tonight, in the lamplit rain, with the whole enormous city murmuring its way toward sleep around you, it does not feel like a boast. It feels like a plain report. High over the rooftops as you walk, you can just make out, here and there, the dark shapes of towers standing above the city, and the boy tells you what they are, because pointing things out is part of the job he has been given. They are fire towers. Men stand watch up there all night, in every quarter of the city, doing nothing at all but watching the rooftops for the first glow of a fire, ready to signal the watch below, because a city of wood and a million lamps takes no chances. Tonight, the boy says, with the satisfaction of a boy delivering the evening's best news, the watchers will have the easiest watch of the year. The rain is standing the watch for them. Every roof in the city is soaked, every gutter running, and the men in the towers will lean on the rail all night with nothing in the world to look at but a wet city sleeping. Even the city's guardians have been let off easy tonight. Hold on to that. It is the whole flavor of this night. The rain has quietly taken over every worry in the largest city in the world, and it will hold them all till morning. The lake arrives the way sleep arrives, gradually and then all at once. The streets grow quieter as you walk west, the shops smaller and darker, the eave water falls louder now that there are fewer voices under them, and then the city simply opens. The buildings step back. You pass through a gate in the western wall where the lamps are lit, and the gatekeepers stand dry in their alcove and wave the boy's lantern through, and the world in front of you goes wide and soft and silver dark, and there it is. West Lake, in the rain, at the very last of the light. You stop. The boy, who has seen it every day of his life, stops with you anyway, because even he knows this is the part where the traveler stops. The lake lies flat as a held breath, a great sheet of pewter-colored water 2 miles across, and the rain is falling on all of it at once. 100,000 small silver rings, opening and closing and opening again, so that the whole surface seems to be quietly applauding something. The hills stand around the far shores in ranges of gray on softer gray, headland behind headland, each one paler than the one before it, until the farthest hills are only a suggestion, a watermark on wet silk, and you understand, suddenly and completely, why the painters of this country paint the way they do. They are not being dreamy, they are being accurate. Mist threads the pines on the nearer slopes. Somewhere across the water, a pagoda stands on a southern headland, galleried and dark, a shape more felt than seen, and on the heights north of you, another pagoda, slender as a brush held upright, keeps its own watch in the rain, and out on the water, scattered across the dusk, the pleasure boats are coming in, the long painted barges that spend the fine evenings drifting full of music, their lanterns lit at the eaves, each light doubled in the water below it, moving slow as constellations toward the shore. Their flutes fallen silent, their evening gently rained to an early close. The lake is going to bed, and you have arrived exactly in time to watch it. The boy leads you north along the shore path, under a long procession of dripping willows whose branches hang down into their own reflections. And as you walk, he tells you, in the offhand way of a boy repeating what every child here knows, a thing about this lake that you will think about for years. The city behind you drinks it. All those streets, all those tea shops and cook shops, and the million suppers being cooked tonight, they drink this lake through 6 ancient stone channels that run under the wall and feed the wells of the city, built by a wise governor hundreds of years ago, so that the people would never be thirsty, and mended and mended and mended again, ever since, most lately by a governor who was also, the boy says matter-of-factly, the greatest poet who ever lived. You will hear more of him tonight, but feel the shape of the fact first, because it is the shape of this whole city's soul, the most beautiful lake in the empire, the lake of poets, the lake the paintings cannot finish, is also the water in everyone's evening tea. Beauty and use, poetry and plumbing, the same water. No one here finds that strange. It is the most natural thing in the world to them that the loveliest thing they own is also the most necessary, and perhaps, before morning, it will seem natural to you too. And then ahead, raised on low wooden pilings, at the water's very edge, 2 stories of timber and tile, with the rain streaming bright off its eaves, its doorway glowing amber around the shape of a man, already looking out for you, stands the tea house. The host comes out under the eaves to meet you himself, which tells you everything about the letter your friend wrote. He is a man of middle years, with a face made kind by decades of steam and lamplight, dressed in a plain robe the color of wet slate, and he bows over his own folded hands and welcomes you, in words the boy does not need to help you understand, because welcome sounds the same in every age of the world. You are here, he says. The rain brought you gently, I hope. Your room is ready above, and the water is already hot. Come in out of the wet, honored guest. Come in. You fold the amber umbrella and stand it by the step, where it leans against the doorpost, dripping quietly beside the umbrellas of the household, and you duck under the lintel, and the tea house takes you in. Warmth first. Not fierce heat, nothing like a blazing hearth, but the round, gentle warmth of a charcoal brazier glowing in the middle of the room, a wide basin of bronze on a wooden stand, filled with coals that have burned down past flame into a deep orange breathing, the finest kind of fire to sit beside, because it makes no demands, only warmth and the faintest occasional tick. On a rainy evening, even a warm one, that glow is the center of the world. Around it the room stands in soft lamplight, low wooden tables dark with years of polishing, benches and stools, the floor swept, and the last 2 or 3 guests of the evening finishing their bowls in the deep, unhurried quiet of people who have nowhere better to be and know it. A serving girl brings you a cloth, warmed by the brazier, to dry your face and hands, and dry slippers for your rained-on feet, and the host hangs your wet outer robe on a frame near the coals where it begins, at once, to steam faintly, giving the day's rain back to the room a breath at a time. And while you settle onto a bench and feel your shoulders come down from around your ears, look around you, because this room is a quiet declaration, and it is the first genuinely surprising thing the city has shown you tonight. The walls are hung with paintings, real paintings, mounted on hanging scrolls, a misty mountain, a branch of blossom, a pair of birds on a bare bough, and they are good, chosen with care, hung with more care, and changed. The host will tell you if you ask, with the seasons. On a shelf by the window stands a vase, holding an arrangement of this very week, a few stems of early lotus, and a cut branch, set with the kind of offhand precision that takes 20 years to learn. Somewhere near the counter, a stick of incense is burning. one thin thread of sweetness laid under the smell of rain and charcoal and tea. Paintings, flowers, incense and tea. In this city those four things are spoken of together, the four refinements, the four gentle arts a person of taste is expected to practice. And here they all are, not in a palace, not in a scholar's villa, but in a public tea house by the shore where a boatman can afford a bowl. That is the surprise. This is an ordinary establishment, one of hundreds around the lake and the city, and it is furnished like a poem, because in the largest city in the world, this is simply what a tea house is expected to be. Beauty is not a luxury here. It is a standard, like clean water. The host asks his one question, the only question of the night. Tea first, honored guest, or supper? And because the rain is loud on the eaves, and the brazier is warm, and you have been out on the water in the wet since morning, you say tea. And the host smiles like a man who has just been told his favorite story has been requested, and goes to wash his hands. What happens next takes a quarter of an hour, and it is one of the two things you are promised tonight. So settle back on the bench, with the brazier warm on your shins, and the rain steady on the roof, and watch. The host does not take down a jar of leaves. Tea does not come to the bowl as leaves in this age, not in any respectable house in the city. It comes as a cake, a small pressed round of tea, dark and dense as a wafer of carved wood, wrapped in paper against the damp, and the host unwraps it at the counter with the particular calm of a man beginning a ritual he has performed 40,000 times and still likes. He breaks off a piece the size of a coin. He grinds it in a small mill of stone, turning the handle in slow circles, and the sound of the grinding joins the sounds of the room, rain, brazier, millstone, like a third patient voice. Then he takes the ground tea and sifts it through a square of fine silk stretched on a frame, tapping the frame softly with 2 fingers, and what falls through the silk is no longer anything you would call tea. It is a powder, fine past feeling, green tinged and pale, and it drifts down into the waiting dish, exactly like the first dry snow of a winter that is still months away. Now the bowl. He takes it down from the shelf where the good ones live, and brings it to your table so you can see it while he works, because he has noticed you watching, and a guest who watches is the best kind of guest. The bowl is the second half of the promise. It is not white. It is not painted. It is glazed a deep, lightless black brown, the color of a starless midnight over the lake, and when he turns it in the lamplight the glaze wakes, and fine streaks run down its inner walls like the fur of a brown hare. Thousands of hairline threads of amber and rust, drawn down through the dark, made not by any painter's hand, but by the fire itself, in a kiln in the far southern hills, where the glaze runs and streaks in the heat, and every bowl comes out marked like no other bowl ever fired. Bowls like this one are prized across the empire, and the host handles his as a man handles a thing he intends his grandson to pour tea in. Why black, you ask, when every other fine thing on the shelf is pale celadon green or white? He smiles. Wait, he says. You will see why black. The bowl knows its business. He warms the bowl first, a swirl of hot water around and out, because a cold bowl, he says, kills the foam, and this evening is not an evening for killed foam. Then the powder goes in, a measured spoonful from a scoop of bamboo. Then a little hot water, just a little, from the long spouted ewer that has been sitting at the edge of the brazier all this while, and with a whisk of bamboo, its head split into 100 fine springy tines, He works the powder and the water into a smooth, dark paste, deliberate as a man grinding ink. And then, traveler, the whisking begins, and the room's quiet gets 1 degree quieter, because even the other guests, who have seen this 10,000 times, look over. He pours and whisks, adding the hot water not all at once but in stages. A thin, bright braid of water from the ewer's long spout, and between every pour, the whisk beats the surface in fast, light strokes. A quick, soft rhythm like a bird's wing, heard from very near, and under the whisk the tea begins to change. It lightens, it rises. A foam gathers on the surface, fine past fine, not bubbles you can see, but a texture like beaten cream, like mist deciding to become snow. And with every pour and every spell of whisking, the foam climbs paler and paler, up out of the green dark, until at last the host draws the whisk away with a small settling flourish and sets the ewer down and carries the bowl to your table with both hands, and you see why black. On the midnight of the glaze, with the hare's fur streaks glimmering at its edges, sits a perfect, unbroken round of foam as white as first snow. Black bowl, white snow, winter conjured out of a warm, rainy summer evening by a man's 2 hands and a bamboo whisk. The dark was never the point, and the dark was entirely the point. The bowl is black so the snow can be seen. An emperor of the last age, a man who loved tea perhaps more than he loved anything else he was given charge of, wrote a whole treatise on this art, and in it he praised bowls of exactly this deep bluish black with exactly these hare's fur streaks, above all other bowls in the world, for exactly the reason now sitting steaming between your hands. Drink, the host says. So you do. You drink it as he shows you, from the bowl itself, in slow small sips, through the cool of the foam into the warmth below. It tastes green, and faintly sweet, and faintly like chestnuts, with a fleeting clean bitterness that folds away and leaves the sweetness behind it, longer and longer after every sip, and it warms you, not the way wine warms, in a rush, but the way the brazier warms, steadily, from the middle outward. Around you the rain keeps up its long, soft applause on the lake. You are drinking snow in summer from a bowl of midnight in the largest city in the world, and the evening has only begun. Supper comes to you by the brazier, because the host will not hear of the honored guest sitting anywhere but the warmest bench in the house. It comes on a wooden tray, dish by dish, and it is simple and perfect, the way food is perfect when a place has been feeding travelers for a very long time and has stopped showing off. There is rice, white and steaming, grown in the flooded fields you rode past for days, the very fields this rain is filling tonight. There is fish from the lake's own cousin waters, cooked in a soup that the host's wife makes in the northern style, sweet and sharp together, silken with ginger. And when the host says the words northern style, he says them with a small tenderness that you only understand later, because half the cooks of this city came from the north 2 generations ago, when the old capital was lost, and the court and a great tide of its people came south, and they carried their recipes the way other refugees carry jewels. The famous fish soups of this lake are sung of precisely because they taste to a certain kind of gray-haired guest like a childhood 500 miles away. In this city, even the comfort food has a memory, but it is a memory at rest now. The peace in the north is nearly as old as the boy who met your barge at the quay, and the soup is simply delicious, and the host's wife sends out a second bowl without being asked. There are greens from the lake itself, the tender coiled shoots of a water plant that grows in these very shallows, slippery and cool and green as the essence of green, served in a clear broth. There is lotus root, crisp and sweet, sliced into pale wheels, with its chamber showing like a section of some fairy architecture. There are salted vegetables to sharpen the rice, and a small dish of the candied fruits of the season, because the boy told the kitchen you had a liking for them, and the kitchen filed the information away with professional seriousness. And the host, his last other guests, seen out into the rain under their umbrellas, sits down across the brazier from you with a bowl of his own, and talks, easily, the way a good host talks, filling the quiet without demanding anything of you. Of the rain, which is good this year, neither stingy nor brutal, the paddies drinking it like guests at a wedding. Of the barge traffic on the canal, and the price of the new season's tea, which is high, because the spring picking in the hills was small and fine. Of his house, which his father kept before him, and the lake, which he has looked at every morning of his life, and never once found the same twice. The ease of this evening, it should be said plainly, rests on many hands besides his, the serving girl, the kitchen, the porters who hauled the charcoal, the boatmen and trackers on the canal, some of them free and hired, some of them bound to service in the way of this age as of most others, and we will not pretend otherwise. Tonight, though, the kitchen is finishing its own supper amid its own laughter, warm and dry, while the rain pays the roof its endless small compliments, and that is the picture we are keeping. You ask him, because the boy's remark has been sitting in your mind all evening, about the governor who mended the water channels, the one who was also the greatest poet who ever lived. The host sets down his bowl with the air of a man who has been waiting all night to be asked, and says, "Ah," and looks out toward the dark lake, and says the poet's name, which is Su Dongpo. And then he says, "You cannot see it now, in the rain and the dark, but you have already been looking at his handwriting all evening. The lake is his handwriting. I will show you from the balcony," he says, "when you have finished the soup. There is no hurrying the soup." But before the balcony, while the girl clears the tray and the brazier gets its evening feeding of fresh charcoal, the host makes one more bowl of tea, a thin, mild evening bowl, the kind that settles rather than stirs. And while he whisks it, he tells you, with the grin of a man revealing his city's favorite vice, about the battles. Tea battles, he says. That is truly what they are called. In this city, and in every city of the empire, and up in the hills where the tea itself is grown, people compete at this, at whisking tea. 2 rivals, or 10, each with their own powder, their own water, their own wrist, whisking bowl against bowl to see whose is finer. And it is judged, he says, holding up one finger, entirely in earnest, the way you would judge anything that matters, by strict and ancient rules. Merchants stake real silver on it. Monks are famous at it. Grandmothers are feared at it. An emperor of the last age, the same one who praised the black bowls, was known to whisk with his own imperial hands, and considered himself, not without cause, one of the finest in the empire, and no one will ever know how many courtiers lost to him on purpose. And the rules, honored guest, are 2. First, the color. The foam must be white, purely white, the white of first snow, before anything has touched it. And a foam that comes up gray, or dun, or tinged with green, shows poor tea, or a poor wrist, and loses on sight. And second, he says, and here he tips his own, freshly whisked bowl, gently toward the lamplight, so you can see the snow, clinging to the dark walls, the endurance. The foam must hold. A perfect foam grips the bowl. They say it bites the cup, and it stands, unbroken, sip after sip, minute after minute. Watch the rim where the foam meets the glaze. The moment a competitor's foam gives way and pulls back from the black wall of the bowl, it leaves a mark, a thin, dark water line against the glaze, plain as a tide line on a stone, and that mark is defeat. First watermark loses. Two old rivals will sit perfectly still, 60 breaths at a stretch, watching each other's rims the way generals watch a river ford. Whole afternoons go this way, in the tea shops of the greatest city on earth, in perfect concentrated silence, over foam. He laughs at himself, at all of it, and hands you the evening bowl. And then, because the rain is steady and the lamplight is kind, and you are clearly a guest who likes to be told one thing more, he tells you one thing more, half a legend but only half, of the true masters, the ones who tour between cities. It is said, he says, that the finest of them do not stop at snow. Pouring and whisking, tilting the bowl, working the foam, thick here and thin there, they can raise pictures in it. A range of mountains in white on white, a heron standing in shallows, a branch of plum. Even, the stories insist, a line of poetry, written in foam on tea, for the length of time it takes the foam to remember it is only foam, and then gone. No one can buy such a picture. No one can keep one. The art is the whole of it, made and admired and drunk, all inside 100 breaths. In your age, traveler, pictures fight to last forever. Here, the highest picture in the empire lasts as long as a yawn, and is considered no less high for that. Perhaps, by the time you are under the quilt upstairs, you will decide they have this exactly right. Nothing beautiful is required to stay. Not pictures in foam, not fine evenings, not even being awake. While the host sees to the brazier, you become aware of a voice from the far corner of the room, low and grainy and pleasantly worn, a voice like a well-used stare, and you realize it has been going on quietly under the evening for some time. In the corner, on the best stool nearest the second lamp, sits an old man with a fan folded in one hand, and gathered at his feet, cross-legged on the floor, with their chins in their hands, sit the boy and the serving girl, and the cook's helper still in her apron, and the old man is telling them a story. He is not a beggar and not quite a guest. He is a storyteller, a professional. And in this city, that is a trade as real as printing or medicine. The host tells you about him in a murmur, refreshing your bowl. In the entertainment quarters inside the walls, there are covered theaters, where tellers like him perform to paying crowds every day of the year, and they are organized, as everything in the city is organized, into guilds by their specialty, and the specialties are strict. There are men who tell only the histories, the wars and oaths and partings of the kingdoms of 1,000 years ago, and men who tell only tales of the holy and the miraculous, and men, very popular men, who tell of nothing but famous court cases, wise judges untangling crimes knot by knot while the crowd holds its breath, and men who tell of love, which draws the biggest crowds of all. The best of them are celebrities. Their names are known across the city, the way you might know the name of a great singer, and apprentices study under them for years, learning 100 stories by heart, learning the pauses, learning the fan. And they all know one trick above every other trick, the host says, smiling, because it is the trick the whole trade is built on, the stop. A teller in the theaters never finishes. He carries his crowd up the mountain of the story, right up to the very cliff edge of it, the sword drawn, the letter opened, the door creaking wide, and there, exactly there, he closes his fan with a snap and says, "And if you would know what happened next, honored friends, come tomorrow." And the crowd groans and laughs at itself for groaning, and pays, and comes back tomorrow. Some of the long histories are spun out that way, over 100 afternoons. There are people in this city, respectable grown people, who have been attending the same story for 3 months, the way you would keep returning to a long book, and perhaps somewhere in your own satchel, traveler, there is a book you're living inside of by a chapter, a night in exactly this way, in which case you and the largest city in the world already share a bedtime custom, 8.5 centuries apart, and neither of you sees any reason to apologize for it. But listen to what the old man in the corner is doing tonight, because it is the opposite, and it is the reason the host lets him shelter here whenever the plum rains come. Tonight there is no crowd to bring back tomorrow, no fan snapped shut at the cliff edge, no reason to withhold a single thing. Rainy nights, the old man likes to say, are for endings. So he sits in the lamplight with his little audience of 3 at his feet, and he pays for his supper by finishing things. And the story he is finishing now, in the low, unhurried voice you can just follow under the rain, is an old one about a traveler, because of course it is. The boy chose it. A traveler years gone from home, among strange rivers, and tonight the old man is bringing him back, mile by gentle mile, past every danger already safely behind him, every debt already paid, down the last valley, through the remembered gate, to the lit door, and the astonished family, and the supper kept warm, and he is taking his time about it, and no one at his feet is in any hurry either, because the end is certain now, and certainty is the sweetest part of any story, as you of all listeners know tonight. Being yourself a traveler arrived, at the lit door, with the supper eaten and warm, the girl's eyes have already closed. The boy is fighting it, out of professional pride and losing. The old voice goes on, softer and softer, walking its traveler home through the rain, and it does not need you to hear the very end, and neither do you. The balcony runs along the whole lakeward side of the upper floor, under the deep overhang of the tiled roof, so that you can stand at the rail, in perfect dryness, with the rain falling 2 feet in front of your face, which is the finest way there has ever been to be in rain. The host brings the lamp, but shades it with his hand, and then sets it back inside the doorway, because the balcony's business tonight is darkness. Stand at the rail, he says. Give your eyes a moment. The lake will come to you. And it does. Out of the blue-black, by degrees, the great water assembles itself. The rain on its surface is a sound more than a sight from up here. That endless fine hiss, softer than the pattering of the tiles behind you. The sound of a lake being gently combed. The last pleasure boats are nearly home now, their lanterns' low amber blooms trailing their doubles through the dark water, and as you watch, one by one, the lanterns slip behind the shoreline willows and are gone, each one leaving the night a shade larger. Far to the south, on its headland, the galleried pagoda has become the faintest possible idea of itself, and running out across the middle distance of the water, straight as a brushstroke, dotted along its length by the small high shapes of bridges, lies a low dark line, a road lying down on the lake. That, says the host, is what I brought you up to see. That is the causeway, and that is Su Dongpo's handwriting. Nearly 100 years ago, he says. The poet came here as governor, not as an honor. Great men in the capital found his poems too honest, and posting him out to Hangzhou was meant to be a kind of exile with scenery, and the lake he was given charge of was dying. You would not believe it tonight, but ask the old men. Weed had taken it, years of it, mats of it thickening season by season, the water shrinking inside its own shores, the channel silting, and the city's 6 stone throats drinking mud. The most praised water in the empire was quietly becoming a marsh. So the poet begged the court for funds and hired thousands of hands through a hungry season and dredged it, all of it. Years of weed and black mud hauled up dripping, boatload by boatload, and any other governor would have paid to have the spoil carried away. Instead, he looked at the mountain of mud he had pulled out of the lake, and he built with it. He laid it down across the water in a great straight line, south shore to north, packed and faced and planted, and made of the lake's own choked heart a causeway, with 6 stone bridges to let the water and the boats breathe through, and willows and peach trees down its whole length, so that a person can now walk dry-footed across the middle of the lake in spring, between 2 long clouds of blossom. The people watched the thing rise out of the water their own hunger had been paid to raise, and they did not name it Weed Bank or Mud Road, though that is honestly what it is. They named it after him, Sue's Causeway. They walked their evenings out along it 3 generations later, and when the mist lies on the water in the early morning, the old men say, the willows of the causeway look like a line of poetry. The lake is still in the middle of writing. And there is one thing more, the host says, and his voice does the thing voices do when they arrive at the piece they have been saving. The poet did not only mend the lake, he watched it in every weather for years, the way you are watching it now, and he wrote down what he saw, and one of the things he wrote became the most famous thing anyone has ever said about any body of water in the world. Every child in the city can say it. He wrote that on a clear day, when the water lies shining and the light leaps on it, the lake is perfectly beautiful. And then he wrote, and here the host turns from the rail to look at you, that in the rain, when the hills go empty and dim and the mist takes the far shore, the lake is also a wonder, strange and marvelous, no less beautiful, and perhaps more. He compared the lake to the most beautiful woman who ever lived in the oldest stories of this country, who was beautiful, adorned in every rich thing, and just as beautiful, with her face washed plain. Sun or rain, the poet said, adorned or plain, there is no bad weather on West Lake. There is only the lake, wearing one of its 2 faces, and travelers, honored guests, have been arriving on the wrong nights and being told this exact thing on this exact shore for 100 years. You look out at the misted water, the vanished hills, the last lantern going out behind the willows, and something in the evening quietly turns over and settles, like a sleeper finding the cooler side of the pillow. You thought you had lost your one clear night on the famous lake. The whole city, and its greatest poet, and its tea-house keepers, and probably its 12-year-old boys, have all along agreed that you were given the rarer face. And halfway along the causeway's dark line, the host adds, out in the deepest part of the lake, where you can see nothing at all tonight, there stand in the water 3 little stone towers, no taller than a man, set out there by the same poet when the dredging was done, to mark the deep heart of the lake, where no one may plant or net, so that the center of West Lake would stay open water forever. They are standing out there right now. The host says, in the dark, in the rain, hip deep in the lake, doing their quiet work of keeping a promise a dead poet made to the water, and they will still be standing there, keeping it, long after everyone now alive under this roof is a name in a family shrine. It pleases him, you can hear it, the way it pleases a man to know the walls of his house are thick. This lake is minded. Everything around you tonight is minded, and none of it by you. Before you go in, the host says, there is one more thing the dark is hiding from you, and since the rain will not let you see it, permit me to tell it, because a guest should not sleep on this lake without knowing who is standing watch over his bed. There are 2 towers on this lake, he says. You half saw them as you came along the shore. On the southern headland, above where the bell will sound, stands the great pagoda, broad and galleried, 5 stories of brick and timber balconies, and on still evenings, the little bronze bells that hang at the corners of all its eaves can be heard clean across the water, though tonight the rain is keeping them mostly to itself. And on the crags north of us, high over the shore you walked, stands the other, the slender one, slight beside the first as a reed beside a barrel, standing up off its hilltop like a single brush held upright against the sky. The broad one and the thin one, the old people call them, and tomorrow, when the mist lifts, you will see them both plain from this rail, standing across the water from each other, the way they have stood for 200 years. Both of them, he says, were raised about 200 years ago, and not by our empire at all. Before the empire gathered everything under heaven, these shores were their own small kingdom, a rich little realm of lakes and harbors, ruled from this very city by its own line of kings, and they were builders. Those kings, temple builders, tower builders, wall builders, and much of what is loveliest around this lake was theirs first. The great southern pagoda was the last king's own work, raised at the height of his fortune, to house holy relics and to stand over the lake in glory. The slender northern one is older still by a little, and its story is the one every child here is told. That same king was summoned north once, to the court of the new empire, a power, as everyone understood, that could have swallowed his little kingdom with a nod, and the months passed, and he did not come back, and no one knew if he ever would. And so his people, his ministers and his family, and, the story insists, the ordinary people of these shores, raised that tower on the highest crag over the lake as a standing prayer, stone laid on stone, each course of it meaning only one thing: bring him safely home. And he came home, rode back south, alive and whole, to his lake and his towers. The prayer is still standing on its hill tonight, 8 generations after it was answered, and people still call it by the name that means protect him, bring him back, and that, honored guest, is the tower that is standing over your bed tonight, keeping, like everything else on this lake, a promise older than anyone who remembers making it. And here's the ending, the host says, and you can hear in his voice the same thing you heard in the old storytellers, the pleasure of an ending that is certain and good. The little kingdom did end. Endings come. The empire stood at its borders in the last king's lifetime with the whole weight of the world, and the king looked at his harbors and his temples and his one green lake, and at the war he could choose to have, and he chose the other thing. He gathered up his kingdom, its cities and its fleets and its registers, all of it, and handed it whole and unburned to the empire, and stepped down from his throne and lived out his days in honor. No siege, no fire on this water, not one tower thrown down. The chronicles of this country, which do not hand out gentleness cheaply, record it as one of the quietest endings any kingdom ever made. And the proof of it is everything you drank and heard and walked past tonight. The lake was never burned. The temples never fell. The bells at the pagoda's eaves have hung in their corners for 200 years, of nights exactly like this one, because a king once looked at the cliff edge of his own story and declined it, and folded his kingdom shut as carefully as a letter. And the empire he handed it to grew into the city whose 1,000,000 people are asleep behind you in the rain. You are spending tonight inside the gentlest ending in the history books, traveler. Sleep is a very small surrender next to that one, and you may make it with honor. And then, out of the darkness across the water, a bell. One deep bronze note from the temple under the southern hill, rolling out over the lake unhurried and immense and soft-edged in the rain, and before it has finished fading, another, and slowly, spaced like the breaths of someone already asleep, another. It is the evening bell, the great bell of the old temple at the foot of Nanping Hill, and it is one of the sounds this lake is loved for, because the hill behind the temple is riddled with caves and hollows, and it catches each stroke and returns it, so that every note comes to you twice. The bell, and then the hill answering the bell, the sound and its echo folding over the water like a blanket being settled over a bed. People cross the city just to hear this. Painters have tried to paint it, the sound itself, an evening bell in rain, and the ones who came closest painted almost nothing at all. A shore, a mist, a suggestion of a roof, and somehow the listening. The monks, the host says quietly, are counting. The evening bell is struck many, many times, slowly, and the number is fixed, and the old ones say the number matches the number of cares a human heart can carry, one stroke for each, so that a person lying down within earshot may lay down one care with every stroke, and arrive at the end of the counting with empty hands. He does not insist on the arithmetic, and neither will we. But the strokes keep coming, patient, evenly spaced, each one dark and round and long-tailed, and there are certainly more of them than you have cares tonight. So the surplus, we may suppose, is being struck for the boatmen, and the fire watchers, and the boy, and for the emperor asleep behind the palace walls, on the hill south of the city, and for the old retired emperor asleep in his garden palace across the town, who, of everyone the bell reaches tonight, probably needs the most strokes. This lake has gathered holiness the way it gathers mist. On the far northwestern shore, in the folded hills you cannot see tonight, stands a temple so old that this city's records barely reach back to its founding. Built, the story runs, by a monk who came walking the whole way from India, 8.5 centuries before tonight. Count that on the pillow, traveler. You have traveled 8.5 centuries to reach this night, and this night, looking back, has that far again to look to reach the founding of the temple across its own lake. The place you are falling asleep in is as old to you as its own oldest prayers are to it. And in the hill gardens around that temple and its sisters, on slopes the monks have terraced, grows tea, the very leaf you have been drinking all evening, tended by monasteries here, since before anyone can say, so long that when the first book about tea ever written in the world was composed, 400 years before tonight, by a quiet scholar of these very riverlands, he set down the tea of this lake's temple hills, by name among the teas of the empire. The bell you are hearing and the bowl you drank are cousins. Both of them were raised in the same hills by the same patient people, and both of them exist for the same purpose, which is being fully attended to, once, slowly, and then let go. The last stroke comes, and its echo, and then the lake goes back to its rain. Come in from the rail now. The lamp is waiting in the doorway, and the host is gathering your dried robe from beside the brazier and up under the roof tiles. At the end of a short corridor smelling of clean wood and rain, a door stands open on a small room that is all yours till morning. The room is small and completely right, a traveler's room, kept by people who have thought for 2 generations about exactly what a tired stranger needs, and just as carefully about what he does not. The lamp, a small saucer of oil with a steady thumbnail of flame, sits on a stool by the bed, already lit. The window is a wooden lattice papered with oiled paper so that it holds the weather out but lets the night in as a soft gray glow, and the rain draws slow shadow lines down it, and it is a finer thing to fall asleep looking at than any window of glass. The floor is clean plank, warm colored in the lamplight. There's a peg for your robe, a basin and a jug of warm water brought up while you were on the balcony, and a low table where the girl has left, covered against the night air, a small plate of the candied fruit, because this kitchen does not forget an established fact. And there is the bed, a real bed, a wooden frame like a small room of its own, with curtains of pale gauze gathered at its posts, which the host lets down and settles around you once you are in. A tent of mist inside the room, soft walls, the thickness of a breath, there to keep the small singing insects of a lakeside summer politely on the far side, and to gather the lamplight into a pale glowing cloud around you. Inside it, the mattress is deep matting. The quilt is silk floss, light as a held breath, and exactly warm enough for a rainy night in the plum weeks. And there are 2 pillows, and the host presents them with the seriousness of a man laying out the last important choice of the evening. One is stuffed soft. The other is a pillow of glazed ceramic, cool as the underside of every pillow you have ever turned over in your life. And it stays that way, he says, all night long, which is why half the empire sleeps on one every summer. You try it. The cool of it against your cheek is instant and delicious. The exact voice of the whole evening, gentle, surprising, and older than it has any right to feel. The host stands a moment at the door with the shaded lamp, running his eye over the room's arrangements, the way you run your tongue over a line you know by heart. Then he tells you, the reckoning is a matter for the morning, that nothing is owed tonight that cannot be counted tomorrow, that the house rises when it rises, and the guest rises when the guest rises, and these are the rules of the house, and there is no arguing with them. Sleep as long as the rain, he says, which in the plum weeks is a generous allowance indeed, and he bows over his folded hands, and wishes you the peace of the night, and goes, and his footsteps go down the corridor and down the stairs at the pace of a man with nothing left in his day but his own bowl of tea, and the door of the room stands closed, and the lamp breathes, and the rain has you to itself at last. And here, before sleep, the room gives you its one small secret. Under the window, outside, close against the wall, the household has planted a broad-leafed plant, a banana of the garden kind, its leaves as long as your arm and as wide as a tray, and it is not there for fruit. It is there for tonight. It is there because rain on a broadleaf makes a different and better sound than rain on anything else. A deep, soft, irregular tap, 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 close under the window, while the tiles above keep the steady patter, and the lake keeps the far hiss. And the poets of this country have been planting that plant under that window for exactly that sound for hundreds of years. There are 1,000 famous lines about it. Night rain on the leaves, listened to in bed, and not one of the poets ever claims to have stayed awake through much of it. Someone in this house loves the sound of rain enough to garden for it. You are sleeping tonight inside an instrument, strung and tuned on purpose by people who considered the sound of falling water on leaves one of the necessities of a civilized life, and every drop the big leaf catches under your window is the proof. Listen now. The whole lake country is going to sleep around you, and every sound it makes is a good sound. The tea house settles first, its own small weathers moving under the rain, the girl's footsteps crossing the floor below, on some last errand and not coming back, the soft knock of the good bowls being nested together on their shelf, the whisk rinsed and hung, the great door braced home, the brazier banked down under its own ash to keep its heart till morning, each sound smaller than the one before it, the house folding itself up for the night, corner by corner, like a letter being carefully closed. Out on the water, the last boats are moored by now, sculls shipped and dripping, the boat families asleep beneath their mat canopies on the same water that rocked them to sleep as babies, the whole lake's little fleet nodding at its ropes with lanterns out. Along the shore path, the willows hold their line in the dark, catching the rain and passing it down, leaf to leaf to leaf, to the ground. Far out, once, a night heron says, the one thing night herons say, deep and brief, and is answered by nothing, and does not mind. And beyond the eastern wall, the greatest city in the world is lying down. You can feel it more than hear it, a settling of the whole night in that direction, the night market long folded, the awnings furled, dripping under the eaves, the last cookshop fires raked, the million suppers eaten and the million bowls rinsed. High on their towers, the fire watchers lean on the rails in their straw capes, looking out over 100,000 soaked and steaming roofs, with, as the boy promised, absolutely nothing to do, the whole city's oldest fear, lying tonight under a half-inch of fallen sky. In the offices of the magistrates, the clerks have covered their inkstones. On the hill at the city's southern end, the palace has gone dark, gallery by gallery, and the emperor of the most populous realm on earth is asleep in the rain like everybody else, which is, when you think of it, one of rain's quiet distinctions, that it falls without the slightest adjustment on palaces and tea houses and moored barges alike, and sends the whole world to bed under one blanket of sound. Somewhere in the wet dark, a watch drum marks the hour, unhurried, already fading as it reaches you across the water, less a sound than a place the night keeps its bookmark. The 6 stone channels under the wall go on quietly drinking the lake all night, as they have for 400 years, so that even the city sleep sips at this water. Everything is doing what it has always done. Everything is where it belongs, and none of it, not one drop or stroke or footstep of it, needs anything at all from you. Tomorrow, in this city, the rain will still be falling, softer, and the whole enormous machine of the place will wake up inside it without a moment's hesitation. Before first light, monks will walk the lanes, striking their little iron plates, calling the hour and the weather to wake the officials for the dawn court, and the word they call tomorrow will be rain, rain, and 1,000 officials will groan into their pillows and reach for 1,000 oiled umbrellas, and you may sleep straight through all of it, because the house rises when it rises, and the guest rises when the guest rises. The barges will come down the canal, low and laden. The tea shops will warm their bowls. The boy will be sent on errands, and will stretch every one of them to pass by the candied fruit stall. And out on the causeway, the willows will stand in the mist over the gray silk water, writing their long line of poetry that is never quite finished. In the rain, the poet said, was the lake's other face, and just as fair. You came a long way for this lake, and the sky, you thought, had taken it from you. Now you know what the city knows. Nothing was taken. You were handed the rarer gift, the washed plain face, the misted hills, the silver rings opening on the water, the bell doubled by its hill, the leaf tuned under the window, and, in a black bowl marked by fire, like no other bowl in the world, a small perfect snowfall in summer, whisked up out of midnight and drunk warm. The clear, bright lake belongs to everyone, every fine day of the year. The rainy lake was tonight's only, and it was yours. And one thing more, the last thing, the thought to be holding as the rain carries you down. This city, the capital of the empire, is not even, officially, the capital. To this day, the court calls it only the temporary residence, because when the dynasty first came south, 2 generations ago, it vowed that this city was a stopping place, a night's lodging on the way back to everything it had lost, and the name it gave the city, Linen, people read as a promise of the same kind, peace for now, refuge for the time being. And then the years did what years do. The stopping place put down the greatest city in the world. The night's lodging built causeways and bell towers and 10,000 lamp-lit shops, planted its willows, printed its money and its poems, perfected the whisking of snow from midnight, and became, while insisting the whole time that it was only passing through, the very place its own proverb sets just under heaven. Temporary, it turns out, is not the opposite of wholly good. Every fine thing you were given tonight was temporary. The foam held its snow for the length of a drinking. The bell held its note for the length of a fading. The boats held their lanterns for the length of a homecoming. The rain will hold its long, soft note for the length of a night. None of it stays, and none of it needed to, and neither does tonight, and neither do you. A traveler in a temporary city, in a temporary rain, perfectly at peace. Tomorrow does not need arranging. Tonight was never anything but yours. Your breathing has gone slow and deep. The lamp by the bed is small and steady, and when it gutters out in the small hours, it will do so politely, without asking you to notice. The cool of the pillow has become simply the shape of your rest. Below you the brazier keeps its banked heart. The bowls sleep nested on their shelf. The umbrellas lean dry inside the door. Yours among them, amber and furled, its work done. Out on the water the rain goes on, combing the lake, patient even, endless. The finest sound in the world to be on the warm dry side of, and the big leaf under the window catches its slow deep notes, tap, 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 one at a time, unhurried, like the bell strokes gone soft, like someone counting your cares downward and finding fewer every time. This is the oldest thing you will ever do, and the safest. Lying down in a small clean room above a great water, in a city that has taken you in, while the rain that feeds the fields falls evenly on the just and the sleeping, on palaces and pilings, on causeways and canopies, on the whole gathered lamplight of the greatest city in the world, gone dark now, roof by roof, all the way to the sea. There is nothing left to carry. The canal is behind you. The tea is drunk, and the bowl is rinsed. The reckoning keeps till morning by the rules of the house, and there is no arguing with the rules of the house. Let the last of the day go now out into the rain, and let the rain have it. It was a long way. It brought you here. And here is a good place, and this is a soft bed, and the night will pass on its own, the way it always has, and carry you, sleeping, all the way to a gray and gentle and perfectly unhurried morning. The lake will keep till morning. The city will keep till morning. The rain is keeping the night. Sleep now, traveler. Good night. History will keep till morning.